Finance and Budget Committee will come to order, and since I didn't ask anyone to do the prayer and pledge tonight, I will do it. So let's stand, please. Oh God, give us the courage to do the right things for the people of Washington County. Amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have some changes to be made to the agenda. 7 and 8 need to be struck because they go to the Quorum Court. They do not require any money, so therefore they do not need to come to the Finance Committee. All those, I need a motion to remove. All right, do I have a second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, 7 and 8 have been struck. I would like to put in place of 7, the coroner has requested some money to buy an additional cooler and be proactive in the situation that we find ourselves in, dealing with the coronavirus. So I want to add number 7, a coroner request for $10,000 to buy a cooler from unappropriated reserves. Okay, all those in favor?
I'd like to ask a question.
Yes.
How many people is that cooler gonna hold?
It's just added to the,
I think he said about 6.
just to add to the agenda right
Because we've got one that'll hold 10 now.
Well, I think he said something, he could make it different numbers. He could increase it by somehow changing the petitions in it or something. Yes. Just a minute.
It's just to add it to the agenda.
I'm just adding it to the agenda. Okay? Any other questions? All right. On number 8, I would like to move number 18 to number 8. 18 is an ordinance authorizing the issuance of sale of capital improvement revenue bonds for the purpose of financing the cost of court facilities, providing for the payment of the principal of and interest on the bonds, prescribing other matters relating thereto, and declaring an emergency.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we move number 18 to number 8.
Do I have a second? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, now, are there any other additions to the agenda? Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve. Second.
All right, motion approved and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, the agenda has been adopted. All right, number 4, our treasurer's report. Bobby Hill.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody. For February, didn't have too bad of a month revenue-wise. First thing, the general fund, 3.4 million in revenues. A little bit over 2 million of that was from Russell Hill paying back the general fund for assessor expenses. 2,000 road, spent about what they brought in. About the same for the jail fund down there. Down at 3550, the crisis stabilization unit. Doesn't show it on this report, but earlier this week we got in 400,000 from the state and we paid it out to the unit for their use. Let's see, bottom of the next page. Began the month with 34.4 million in the bank, ended the month a little over 33 million. And also either the end of this month or the very 1st of April will be our first Johnson Control payment. And that'll be 470,000 coming out of the general fund. 4.2, the 1 cent sales tax. Good month all around for sales tax. a little over 8% increase over last year, 764,000 that came in. These numbers represent December, which of course is Christmas. And who knows what's coming? Everything's going great right now in sales tax, but as we know in the news and coronavirus and all that, if people stop going to Walmart and stuff, then these numbers will go down. Quarter-cent sales tax. For the first time ever, for a single month, it came in over $1 million, $1,039,000, 77,000 more than last year at this same time. 4.4 road half-cent sales tax. Up also over 8%, 152,000 came in. And just the new radio tax that was approved last week by the voters, collections began July 1st. We'll see the first money from that in late September. And it'll end June 30th, and we'll get the last money in August of 2021. Just for your information. That's all I have on that report.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Hill? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering, as I pay sales tax, if the internet sales tax has increased and how that revenue stream seems to be going.
I think last month it was dollar-wise spread over the whole thing was like $200,000 increase, which, but you're splitting that with the cities and the jail.
So we retained
And all that.
200,000.
Just this for that 1 month. But yeah, it's going well. I think overall it's probably going to add 5%
Is that what you expected?
to the totals. So I think if we didn't have it, we'd be around a 3% growth, but right now we're at 8, so that's just, right now that's the way it's looking.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lemming?
Bobby's probably not the one to ask, but I'd like to have a update on the money that we're gonna spend, $470,000 for, where we're at and what we've got done and where we're at on all that. That'd be nice to know. Who would be able to give us that? Would it be the buildings guy?
More than likely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I mean Johnson Controls?
Johnson Controls, yes.
Johnson Controls,
Yes.
okay. We could, that might be for a service committee to have him report at the service committee.
All I know is I'm going to write them a big check here in a couple of weeks. That's my part of it.
Should be May the 28th.
Yeah.
That's on my birthday, that's special week.
Oh, all right, we can do that.
JP Sue Madison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since we're talking about that, are they almost finished with the project?
I'm not sure I have no idea what their timeline is. I know they've been up at the courthouse for several months now, but I have no idea when they're going to complete.
I think it was at the last Quorum Court meeting I asked for an update on that. I don't think we've had one yet.
No,
Dwight may be able to answer that kind of stuff.
I think that's also put on the service committee for next month. Start having those reports monthly. All right, are there any other questions for Mr. Hill? All right, thank you, Bobby.
Thank you.
All right, we're ready for our insurance report, Mr. Nelson Driver.
Good evening, everyone. The insurance report is fairly straightforward. It's in your packets, and we began the month of February with $3,073,445 in the health fund. We ended the month with $3,056,539. So the health fund is still remaining good and stable. I checked the balance this afternoon, and the balance right now after paying the bills is $2,963,000 in some change. So we're staying right on an even keel with the health fund. I anticipate next month in April's meeting, I'll come to you with a quarterly report to see where the numbers are trending at that point and see what the forecast looks like. But other than that, we're staying good and healthy. Knock on wood.
Are there any questions for Mr. Driver? Thank you. Keep up the good work. Keep them healthy. All right, we're ready for our controller's report. Mr. Shannon Worthen.
6.1 is the unappropriated reserves balance report, and it reflects the ordinances from February. And the net general after the negative for the jail is $3,879,304. Then 6.2, the expenses by fund and department. We should be at about 17% for this time of the year. And general services, we covered last month while they're up a little bit. Then over on page 12, Department of Emergency Management is up a little bit, but they had some front-loaded expenses for some different software renewals that are annual, and for hazmat services and their fleet liability. Then overall for general at 17.9%, and then over on page 16 for all the funds in total at 18%, which is about where they should be. That's it.
Are there any questions, Mr. Worthen? Well, everything seems to be going smoothly, so thank you.
You bet.
Brian, did you bring an ordinance for the coroner?
No, Jordan, he didn't request an ordinance from me.
Okay. Okay, we'll have to have an ordinance for this. What? Okay, what I suggest is that we go on and pass his request for the money, and that the ordinance be ready for the Quorum Court next week. Yes.
I continue to have a disagreement that we can pass anything without a drafted ordinance out of a committee. So let me just
Okay, go on.
suppose that, let's draft the ordinance, bring it to the regular Quorum Court meeting next week, and we can put it on the agenda then by suspending the rules and putting it on the agenda. I think that's a more appropriate action taken. I don't like taking action unless I've seen the ordinance first.
No, it's 10,000.
I don't think there's a motion needed.
Well, I agree with you that, and I don't know why he didn't request someone to write it, because he had talked with the county judge and with the concerns that he has of why he needs this cooler. And so therefore, I'm gonna declare an emergency just because of the environment and the situations and things that are going on right now. J.P. Ecke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just trying to find a solution to this, because we need an ordinance. If Mr. Morris feels that we need an ordinance, I'm sure that he will contact County Attorney Brian Lester, and we'll have it ready for the Quorum Court. But until then, I think we need to just
All right.
table this
so-
until we have further clarification from our coroner.
Okay, I
If-
talked
if-
with him
because-
like 30 minutes ago, and he got the price for me.
Okay.
So, yes, Sue Madison, or Eva Madison.
The coroner called me today about it, and he understood that it would be discussed tonight. It would be on our agenda. He told me that J.P. Harbison was taking care of it. I don't know what that means. We didn't discuss it, but he just wanted to make sure I understood the reasoning. And it sounded, as I understand it, the current cooler is full.
Yes.
And he is anticipating if we needed us, because of the life of a virus post-death, just the need for one, and he's trying to prepare and be ready, but also just to have the capacity. I think this is something that I think we're all going to agree on. So to force the coroner to have an ordinance when I think he thought that we would discuss it just seems a little hyper-technical. I think we should pass this on. It'll be in ordinance form when we get to Quorum Court, and we should just do this. So.
I'm just going to make one comment. The contact with the coroner was, my first contact was this afternoon. I asked for prices, and he got back with me with the price. All right, JP, Sue Madison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The coroner spoke to me, it's been some time ago, on just a general issue that's changed with his office that I think is really a bigger issue here for us, and that is that so many families are choosing not to claim the bodies of their loved ones, and he ends up providing storage until they figure out what they're going to do. I don't know whether that's a cost-saving measure for the families but he is storing more bodies as we speak, which is why the current cooler is full. And he did some investigating and was able to find a good price. And as you can imagine, they might be expensive. So I think this is a good timing on his part to grab this one while we have the opportunity. And I would make a recommendation that we consider favorably endorsing this for Quorum Court's consideration. You want me to make a motion to that effect? I would move that this committee favorably endorse the purchase of a new cooler for our county coroner.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll be in favor of this. We are in need of this cooler. Would not only be in favor of, I'm saying I'll endorse it verbally this evening, and I might be in favor of a motion to have an ordinance for us to look at the Quorum Court, so we'll have something to vote for. If that may not be part of y'all's motion, but
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
so that's all I'm
Any more
saying.
discussion on it, or we done?
I'm in favor of it, but what we're passing this evening is just an agreement that we recognize the
Favor.
need for it, and we just want to see an ordinance that we can vote for. Thank you.
JP Lemming.
Well, I'll be in favor for it, but it's not for the corona scare. What I see is if you turn a school bus over in the city of Fayetteville and you got 10 spots for people that get hurt down there or die down there, 20 or 30 it would be a lot better number for the whole big picture for the county. So in a crisis unit, I mean, even in the crisis side, you need more space. So I will be for it, but we want an ordinance like we need to. Thank you.
So I wish they would have just brought an ordinance and it would have made it a lot easier. So I'll vote against it because I think we should just see an ordinance and then we can vote on that. But also I'm curious, it sounds like there's two issues. I think coronavirus is totally something to throw on this. I mean, that doesn't have any correlation to me with this at all. But it sounds like our biggest issue is the number of people who are not willing to pay for their loved ones to be buried. So I don't know if we can pass a state law or not us, but the legislators can pass a law to require people to have to fund that. I mean, I think that would alleviate the cooler space issue. And I don't know, I didn't get a call from the coroner, so this is the first time I heard about it whenever you mentioned adding it to the agenda. So again, I'm gonna vote against it. I think we've got another issue, and this just kind of covers up that issue. I think we need to actually solve the problem, which is people not paying for their loved ones.
JP Deacon.
What are we voting on? That's what I'm.
We're okay.
I'm not in disagreement that our coroner has very much highlighted a need that we all need to support. But we lose no time if we get the ordinance drafted and bring it up at the next committee, at the regular Quorum Court meeting next week. So what are we voting on tonight? That we're in favor of it?
That we're in favor of it, and
But
that
the
we
ordinance
want
would
an ordinance drawn up, to meet, with the cost of it, for us to vote on at the Quorum Court meeting.
But then we would still need to add that ordinance to the agenda next week.
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna vote for it just to entertain you guys, but
Okay. JP,
So I'm with JP Deacons on this, so I'm gonna vote against it just to follow rules, but I'm for it. But just following rules.
JP Pond, okay.
I do want to make it clear, since there's not been a sign of any of this coronavirus that we've seen in the news. That I'm for this, but it's not got anything to do with that. That's a kind of a unreasonable notion that we should vote for this new cooler, 'cause we might have somebody with coronavirus one of these days. But anyway, thank you.
I just want to clarify, it seems like, if I understand, the general consensus of the court is that we want an ordinance drawn up to vote on at the Quorum Court meeting with the specifics in it. Is that, and it needs to be, so we have a recommendation, I suppose, from the court to have the ordinance drawn up and to vote on it at the Quorum Court meeting. All right.
I would like to know if Attorney Lester has anything to add to this as far as the legality of moving it forward to the full Quorum Court. And he says, "Thank you, Lisa Ecke, very much."
Roger called me this afternoon, right before he called all of you, and said he was wanting to inquire about this. He didn't have a number. There's some other things that go along with this, as far as a pad being poured, a wall being cut out. I don't have any figures for you to know exactly what it's gonna cost. And so, one, he never really said, "Hey, will you draft an ordinance for tonight's meeting?" He said, "Hey, what do I do?" I said, "Call the Quorum Court, let them know if you want them to talk about it or consider it." Secondly, I wouldn't have gotten it done before tonight anyways, because it was late this afternoon when he called. I guess you can pass on, I don't see any reason why you couldn't pass on the idea of talking about something at the Quorum Court meeting, but you're technically not passing an ordinance out. To JP Deacon's point, there will still have to be an ordinance, it'll still have to be added, the rules will have to be suspended because the agendas have already gone out, then you can talk about it. And so, I will get with him and try to see if we can get some numbers on the full extent, what that's gonna cost, not just the cost of the actual unit itself.
Thank you.
Okay. Jenkins. Andrea, all I could think of was Andrea, okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really feel like we should just stop discussion on this at this moment. I think we wasted enough time tonight. I feel like when we have that ordinance, we can suspend the rules at the next Quorum Court meeting and move from there like we've done before. Thank you.
All right, well, we have a recommendation. All those in favor, did we have a second? Yes. All those in favor of sending a recommendation on to the Quorum Court, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. All right, passed. All right, thank you. Let's get to the real issues. 18 is the bond issue. Do you want to speak to this, Mr. Lester, please?
So I am here as the third string backup because Judge Wood is out of town, Chief Gales is out of town. Shep Russell, who's the bond counsel with the Friday firm out of Little Rock, had a commitment tonight in Blytheville, I think. So I'm here to answer whatever questions I can about this bond or this ordinance. I will lay some groundwork. This bond basically sets the parameter, or this ordinance sets the parameter for the bonds. As you're aware, this is a general revenue stream bond. It's one of those few mechanisms that you can do that we being the county, have historically utilized in the past to fund certain projects. One of which, it would be, for this particular case, the funding of the Juvenile Justice Center expansion. And so it's a dedicated revenue stream bond. It doesn't cost the county any money. It takes some of our fines because there are some, it's like a loan, you pay some interest. But you don't have to go to the voters. We're not talking about a sales tax or any excess tax. We are currently receiving money pursuant to a bond just like this, which was done several years ago for the renovations at the historic courthouse. We currently have enough money to pay off the remaining balance of that bond, which we would have to do in this case, pay that balance off and still have a little bit of money left. And then we would reissue those bonds, and they would produce income. It sets, the parameters are in here, you can see, it sets a cap at 5.3 million. And then there's Article 6 is the form of a bond. You'll see a lot of blanks because until we get to the point that the bonds are sold, there won't be anything to do. So basically what Mr. Russell has told me is this just kind of sets the parameters. If this is passed, bonds are sold, then in April we'll come back with another ordinance that'll actually put into all of these blanks, all the documents and data that we have as far as the interest rate and all that kind of stuff. And so other than that, I know it's pretty wordy. I've read it. It's not too terribly difficult to understand, but it just kind of sets out what the bonds are going to look like.
All right, J.P. Ecke?
Thank you. Mr. Lester, do we know what the interest rate is, I mean, with current interest rates falling?
They are. They
We would
are.
like to just kind of get the best, lowest rate.
Or they have been. I don't know. So that's one of the things in talking with the finance guys that you never know because of how these bonds work. You don't know what that actual rate's going to be until the actual sale of the bonds. And so from where we started, when we first started talking about this, I think those rates have gone down a little bit. And you can always kind of tell based on what the market's doing. The market has gone down. It has started to come back up. So those rates that have gone down will start to come back up with it. I think we are, I'm not even sure that I'd be saying the right number if I talked about a percentage. So it's one of those things that you don't know until the bonds are actually sold.
So does the Fed cutting interest rates have anything to do or
Sure.
affect this bond?
I believe so. And as you can see, the bond, there is a parameter in here that says that under no circumstance or
What page
condition.
are you on?
I'm looking here. Let me see. Page 2 at the top, B, the interest and discounts and all shall not exceed 3.5%. So, I mean, there are parameters to say, hey, if we get to a point and it's more, then this wouldn't go through, I don't believe. But those are the parameters that are set forth that the bond has to meet in order to be sold.
Okay, J.P. Madison. Sue Madison.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Do we know what the bond attorneys are charging this time? I think I remember a surprise bill before.
It's all, their rates are based on the bond itself. And so I don't know. Shep will be here next Thursday night. Mr. Russell will be here to talk about all of that. This will not be a surprise because unlike that particular project where the fees were left out, the fees will be included into this, which is typically and historically how this court has voted and done year after year after year on bonds. I mean, it's not really a surprise, I don't believe, to anybody because it's the same as it's always been. I mean, this process doesn't change and it never has. So that's my
And
understanding.
rates are fairly uniform across the state from whomever does it.
That's correct. They have to be or they wouldn't be competitive.
Thank you.
And there aren't a lot of attorneys that do bond work in Arkansas.
All right. Are you finished? Okay, J.P. Duncan?
Is there a motion on the floor?
No.
I move to pass 18.1.
Do I have a s-
Second.
All right, JP, Eva Madison?
I was curious if we had, in the analysis of this, if we have, we feel like this revenue stream is pretty solid, just because with our criminal justice situation, I wonder if we've analyzed the steady flow of these fees. Do you, Madam Chair, do you understand the?
Yeah, I
the
understand.
source? No, I'm sorry.
Do I understand how much money's coming in?
Well, the specific nature of the fees, what they're charged on.
Well, I have talked with Mr. Sylvester, and I asked one time for a list, and he said, well, he sent them to Bobby, and Bobby puts them in the right place. So that, I've never really gotten a list of what
Well,
the
here's-
fees were.
Yeah, if,
Other,
This would come out
Well-
of the court cost and fines fund. For example, 2017, we got 430,000 in. 2018, 380. 2019, 335. So it
any
is
idea why it's going down?
Going down.
Yeah, do we know why?
I do not know why.
Do you know the precise nature of the fee and what it's put on?
Do you know, Kyle?
see,
No, I don't know about the different fees and the.
Because $100,000 decline in 2 years is a lot.
430 to 380 to 335. It's on pace this year we're just 2 months in, but it's on pace this year for 350.
And then the courthouse refinance, when is that done?
I think they're gonna pay it off.
This year?
Yeah, I think it has to be paid off before this can start.
What's what's 900,000?
We have 850,000 currently in the account, and I think Bank Core South has an additional 200,000 that would come off the top, so.
So what's the balance on the courthouse?
900,000. I think it's something like that, it's the last I heard.
So we're gonna pay that off how?
We have 850,000 in the account, of
Okay.
the fund, and Bank Core South is holding 200,000 or so.
And why are they is that to secure
That's-
the bonds or something?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
just what they do. And so that would be $1,050,000 or $1,500,000. So maybe we'd have 100,000 to 200,000 remaining when this gets started.
okay.
And so, sorry,
Go on.
and do we know on the 5.3 in this, what the annual payoff is gonna be?
The principal interest per year,
Yeah,
I haven't seen that yet.
I don't know, this math makes me a little nervous, because paying off
Oh.
900,000 to have just like a very small amount in the fund, with a declining revenue source.
So that we get,
That's a little
we get
disconcerting.
35 to 40,000 a month from Kyle for
Yeah.
that.
Do you know, Kyle, that what these are applied to and why they're declining?
Well, the only reason I can think that they might be declining is people are paying fines.
What'd he say? I can't.
People aren't paying their fines.
Oh, okay.
The judge may not be enforcing that too. That's just a guess. I don't have any knowledge of that happening.
Okay, well, that's something to think about. Thank you.
Okay.
Is this a 45-year,
JP Lemmy?
is this a 45-year bond?
Well,
It matures in
well, it
2045.
could, but it could also be paid off earlier.
It's 25? Thank you.
All right, well, the revenue is about $30,000 a month, so, anyway, we have okay, are there any other, does anyone else want, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Let's speak to the whole court, please. All right, we have a motion on the floor to pass this on to the Quorum Court. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, it's passed on to the Quorum Court. All right. We now are ready for number 9. An ordinance amending 2019-086 to allow remaining personnel balances to fully or partially fund the 27th employee payroll that was not included in the 2020 budget. All right, you want to explain this, Mr. Hill, please?
Well, I sent out a lengthy email to everybody back in February concerning this, but in a nutshell, once every 11 years, you have 27 payrolls instead of 26. This year was budgeted for 26. So we pretty much have two options. One is to, like this ordinance says, leave the personnel funds where they are at the end of the year, and hopefully they will pay for most, if not all, of this 27th payroll. If we don't do that, we can just budget it for 2021, but employees will have to be paid on the 1st, and no banks are open. So, and all the elected officials were unanimous in this, what this budget says in our agreement. That's what we would like to see done. But
Okay, now, what we have here is that the budget controls would have to, that we set in place would have to be amended, the one on surplus personnel appropriations. And Mr. Hill and I did not want to do away with the sweeps, but at least I want it reported quarterly how much money is sitting in budgets of unused money because of lack of personnel that had not been hired. Okay, I hope I made that clear. But anyway, so basically what's happening is they're getting an extra paycheck in 2020, which we have not budgeted for. All right, so Mr. Hill's recommendation is that we use the unappropriated money coming from personnel, that remain in the personnel, and that money just be used to cover this extra pay period. Am I covering that correctly, Mr. Hill?
yes,
Okay, so I had concerned about that because I thought it would be illegal. But the Association of Counties says that there is a legal loophole in a law that allows one-time paying funds that's not in the budget, I guess.
It allows
but we
for
have to,
that 27
we'll have
payroll.
to appropriate it for the budget. But if we leave it, okay, does it have to be appropriated if we pass this ordinance tonight?
only, you would have to, if a certain budget didn't cover it, we would have to do an appropriation to cover it.
So, okay,
You might do that now with what they all call housekeeping, that sweeps or whatever. But it would have to be, appropriated somehow, if not enough is there to cover it.
okay, J.P. Ecke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do we know how much money we're talking about?
Not at this point. We might when we get closer to the end of the year, but the last 2 years,
Estimate?
I think there's been altogether over $1 million not spent out of personnel.
Okay. But we're, just a rough estimate, just so that way we'll know about how much?
Gross payroll is 1.1 million
Okay.
every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks. Okay. That helps. Thank you.
Okay, J.P. Dakin.
When is the pay date? You said if we don't do this and we include it in the 2021, the pay date would be January 1, 2021. What's the pay date if we left it in 2020?
The 31st, December 31st.
What's the consequence of us waiting later in the year to take this action? To see what the financial state of the county is?
No, I mean, it's pleasure of the court when you want to.
I mean, we could do this in August.
Yes. But if you do it in August, then Shannon's going to do all the moving the money out, due to the budget controls that was passed in 2020.
Right.
Then you'd have to put it all back. But
And so the budget controls and the sweeps were there to pay for raises. And now we're gonna take that away and pay payroll.
Okay, any other comments? J.P. Johnson?
I'm struggling. We approve a budget that has annual salaries in it. How they're divided up and given to the employees doesn't make any difference to me. I mean, I've never gotten an extra paycheck in my life. So are we saying there's an extra, I don't understand this.
I mean, yes, there's an extra payroll either this year or next year. And it's accounted for by state statute. The 27th payroll is allowable to, that would make somebody's salary more than was approved.
All right, we could change the system, but it costs a little bit of money to do it because we could go to a monthly pay twice a month instead of every 2 weeks, and that would take care of the situation. But I talked to Shannon about this, and he says the whole payroll system has to be redone, and the program that they use, another program would have to be bought and put in place, basically. And so therefore, that was additional money. Now, what we have here is that this started many years ago, paying every 2 weeks. So this has gone through many administrations, many county judges. So I'm inclined to think at some point that someone needs to bite the bullet and do twice a month and do away with the every 2 weeks. But that's my opinion. Thank you.
I'm with Lance. I mean, if you get paid $40,000 a year, it doesn't matter if that's over 26 pay periods or 27. Like, I still don't understand how that's all of a sudden going to cost the county another $1 million. It's, you just divide it by 27 versus 26, and that's
Well, it'd be
the
an
paycheck
option
for the year, right?
If you start at the first of the year doing it, now would be a problematic.
Because everyone's paychecks would go down for the rest of the year. So then everyone just
That's one of the bad parts is, because employees don't, and I can see, they don't look at it as they're getting an extra payday. They're getting every 2 weeks like normal. And it just so happens, on your W-2, it's gonna show this year you made more money.
Yeah, it's 3.7%.
But to them, you're getting paid every 2 weeks, just like normal.
Is that right? So if I take 1 divided by 27, that's 0.037. It says 3.7% pay increase, everybody, right? Or is my math wrong? So
I'll leave that to
I mean,
you.
I'd love to get paid an extra 4% for doing nothing this year, but. I think I think people's paychecks have to go down. It doesn't make sense you're just essentially adding another 3.7% raise, which would be great if we had infinite money, but we don't. So it's $1.1 million that we don't have, right? So I think we need to figure out what the cost is to do the new system, new payroll system. And then you'll have to figure out, I guess employees are gonna be mad because their paycheck's gonna go down from this point forward through the rest of the year. But there's no way I would vote for us just throwing another $1.1 million for no reason, right? So I'll vote against it.
So the 27th payroll is something that happens pretty predictably every few years, just because of the way the cycle works.
Once every 11, yes.
Employees really like every 2 weeks because there are 2 months out of the year where they get an extra check, and it's just a nice way to pay employees. Because of the 27th payroll, no employer readjusts the biweekly pay based on the fact that there's a 27th payroll. Most companies and most employers in 2019 looked ahead and said that 27th payroll is going to hit next year, and we have to budget for it. And so I will say this, the fact that we did not include that in our budget is on us, and I don't think we should make our employees suffer for it. My law firm anticipated a 27th payroll and budgeted the money necessary to pay that payroll in 2020. And so when I found out about this issue, I thought, it's all over the internet that 2020 would have a 27th payroll. The fact that we didn't think about that is on us. I do not think that it's going to be at all good for the morale of our employees to say, okay, we're solving this by lowering your biweekly pay. Because this is on us for not budgeting for it.
I was just gonna say, thank you, Madam Chair. I was just gonna say, I'm assuming that this has to do with the fact that we had hours that overlap from 2019 into 2020 as far as the pay time frame.
Well, I mean, it's a little bit added each year
Yeah,
for 11 years.
right.
And
It just
catches up that one year.
It catches up though, and it all hits in the 2020 year. That was all I was wanting to clarify.
Anyone else want to speak? Okay, JP Sue Madison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. An employee is going to get paid more money in 2020 than in 2021, given if the salary was the same. Is that going to change their tax consequences?
Their W-2, yes.
When really they weren't due to be paid the money until January, but because of where it falls,
Yes.
we either have to pay them in 2020 or they don't get paid when they should be paid.
Yes.
But the tax consequence is not significant, right?
It'll be one extra payday.
One day.
Not one day, one pay
One
period.
pay period.
2-week pay period.
Yes, this is something we certainly should have anticipated.
All right. Any other comments? JP Pond?
It's not like this is the first time, we didn't just wake up and this just happened all of a sudden. It happens like every 11 years. And okay, once we get past this, nobody's gonna remember to do something ahead of time, you know. It's all my fault. I'll take the heat, but let's pay them. You know, it's not like we're paying them, okay, I know, let's everybody work for free on one day every 4 years for leap year, you know, there's an extra day, you know. But, I think everybody's kinda got it figured out what it is. I don't see any sense in making a big show out of it. The people, they worked, they've accrued the time or the money or however you wanna figure it. And I don't think we need to put them off. I agree with, JP Madison. Thank you.
All right. Eva Madison.
The only thing I was going to say is that if we start adjusting biweekly pay, it could have wage and hour implications legally too that we would need to consider, because some of our employees just probably barely make enough to be considered exempt. So I just think we need to factor that in. So
I mean, like I said, 2021 is an option to budget for it. But people will get, I would come in and people could come pick up their checks on January 1st, and that's on a Friday. Banks are closed. Some banks are open, would be open at Saturday, but most people wouldn't get actual money until Monday of the.
All right. Do I have a motion of any kind? Pass what? Okay, okay, just a minute. We've got an ordinance that 9.1, which the surplus personnel appropriation shall be reported from full-time salaries on a quarterly basis instead of deappropriated and put in unappropriated funds. So, yes.
And in reference to what Mr. Hill said, I think 9.1 should also include a suspension of the budget controls to the extent to effectuate this, so that the comptroller doesn't have to go through and do all of that. If state law provides a loophole, then let's put that same loophole in our budget controls. That's not the way to word it, but it seems like we shouldn't make you go through and revise every single budget to address this if state law
You mean to
addresses
take
it.
the appropriations that are not used for personnel?
Well, I know, but I'm saying.
I mean, we're got the sweeps in there, and he's wanting to use that sweep money for that extra pay period.
Right, but he was saying that part of the work that this creates is that it will require the comptroller to go in and amend every budget because of budget controls. And I say suspend the budget controls to effectuate this ordinance to eliminate that work. It just seems unnecessary.
I think that it gives us an idea. What we have is we have money sitting in budgets that we don't know how much is there. If we have an emergency of some kind, then we don't know how much money is there. This is why I wanted to put the quarterly sweeps back in, and we voted to do that. So we're basically saying we're not going to do that if we pass this ordinance. Or he could go on and tell us how much money is in each budget that has not been used, and not put it in unappropriated reserves. Now, that was the kind of the compromise that Mr. Hill and I came to, because I wanted to know how much money is sitting in each of these budgets. And, you know, there's 18 different budgets that salary comes out of.
Madam Chair, I'm not arguing with you or the purpose of the ordinance. I'm suggesting that we add to the ordinance to suspend the budget controls to affect what we're doing through the ordinance. That's all I'm doing. I'm not arguing with what you're saying or the ordinance. I just think that we ought to also address the budget controls. That's
Down
it.
the bottom of Article 1, does that not satisfy it?
That lines 85 through 87 of ordinance 2019-086 shall be amended as follows. Surplus personnel appropriation shall be reported from full-time salaries on a quarterly basis, April, July, and October. And it takes out, these surplus funds shall be restored to unappropriated reserves.
I was trying to address what you were saying, Mr. Hill, about the comptroller having to go in and affect this due to budget controls. And so I was trying to say, well, don't do that.
Well, that's what, this came from budget controls.
Well, but I thought it was the part about personnel moving money that you were talking about,
No.
which is not this section.
No, it's not this.
Oh, okay. I was talking about just when you de-appropriate, he would have to go in there and
Well,
do his thing.
I'm trying to make sure that we appropriately amend the budget controls to allow what J.P. Harbison is proposing to be done, but also not to require our comptroller to have to go through and adjust every single salary in the budget. So,
No.
somebody wave a wand and do that.
Well, maybe I'm dumb, I mean, it's a very
Well,
good possibility.
We're not
But
amending every,
But instead of de-appropriating, we are reporting, instead of actually doing it, we're just gonna say this is what we have. Way I understand it, but.
J.P. Ecke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If the one that is affected by the process is our comptroller, do you have a recommendation of how this needs to be worded, or are you satisfied with it? Because we do not want to add more work on you having to go in and adjust everybody's budget. And I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, it'll be more work, but I'm willing to do whatever y'all decide.
But it's not,
That's political.
it's not it's not every person. It's just those positions that have not been filled. Do you understand what I'm talking about?
Okay, only the positions that have not been filled.
That's the money that goes back. It's only the money that has not been used.
I get you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we do. All right. We had a motion. I'm not sure. What do we have on the floor? Who seconded? 9.1.
I'll second it. I thought
Okay, all right, there's been a motion to pass 9.1. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed, raise your hand. All right, it's passed on to full quorum court. All right. Let's move on to 10. An ordinance recognizing additional revenue of $500,000 in the JDC Pond Landscape Grant Fund and appropriating $500, not 500,000. I'm sure that, okay, an ordinance recognizing additional revenue of $500 in the JDC Pond Landscape Grant Fund and appropriating $500 from the grant fund to the JDC budget for 2020. Yes.
I would move to pass 10.1 onto the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation and place it on the consent agenda.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, we're on number 11. An ordinance anticipating additional grant revenue in the general fund for 2020 and appropriating said revenue to various budgets within the drug court grant fund 3513 for 2020. Yes.
I have a question, and then I'll make my motion.
Okay.
But why do we appropriate money for the Madison County Drug Court?
Well, it's a part of our drug court.
Don't they pay for their own drug court? Well, I mean,
It's a
we
grant.
have fun, it's just was surprising to me to see appropriations for Madison County in our budget.
Okay.
Anyway,
Any other comment? Okay, JP Pond.
Do they actually hold a drug court over at Madison County physically, or is it, we just have Madison County people attending drug court here at our historical courthouse?
I have no idea. Jade Zimmerman, do you know the answer to that question?
They hold drug court in Madison County.
They do, okay, that answers it. Okay. Do I have a motion? All right. All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. No. Raise your hands. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, that's 8. All those opposed, raise your hands. It passes on to the full quorum court. All right, number 12. An ordinance recognizing additional revenue in the amount of $76,382 in the law enforcement grant fund and appropriating the amount of $76,382 from the law enforcement grant fund to the SCAP 219 budget for 2020. What? Oh, okay, I forgot. Sorry. All right.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No. All right, raise your hands. Everybody in favor, raise your hand.
Sam, raise your hand.
No, we're voting on, so.
All right, that's 7. All right, all those opposed, raise your hand. Passes 7-5. Are there any okay,
I don't think we should be putting things on the consent agenda when there's not a unanimous vote. I'll just point that out, because they're just gonna get pulled back off the consent agenda, so we might wanna address that
Okay.
here.
Thank you. Okay, is there any public comment on the SCAP grant? Seeing none, we'll move on to 13. An ordinance anticipating additional revenue in the amount of $14,312 in the Law Enforcement Grant Fund and appropriating $14,312 from the Law Enforcement Grant Fund to the JAG grant budget for 2020. Do I have a motion?
She needs a motion, make it
That's number 14.
14, the grant fund to the JAG.
13, excuse me. Yes.
I'd move to pass 13.1 onto the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation and place it on the consent agenda.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passed to the consent. Are there any comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll go on to 14. Yes.
I thought we generally asked for public comment before we voted.
She did?
Okay. I thought, okay, I'll do that the next time. An ordinance recognizing revenue in the amount of $339,307 in the high-intensity drug trafficking area.
Move to
Area.
pass 14.1.
All right,
Second.
all those in favor say aye. Oh, wait a minute, public comment. Yes,
I'd like to amend his motion to put it on the consent agenda.
okay. Do we have any public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. We're ready for 15, a resolution authorizing submittal of an application to the Arkansas Unpaved Roads Grant for road improvement on Jess Anderson Road, WC 882.
Move to pass 15.1.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any public comment?
Can I amend, or can I make the motion to amend adding this to the consent agenda?
Sure.
Okay. It's on the consent agenda. Now, do I have any public comment on the unpaved road grant? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ordinance passed. On to the Quorum Court. An ordinance adjusting carryover revenue and various funds for 2020. All right, I think this,
Mr. Chair, if anybody's got any questions?
yes, you want to go over this, please?
This is that big carryover column I do for the budget process. And this is what has to be taken away from or what needs to be added. Pretty pleased overall with the numbers. The first one, road department, they added to their budget in December, so it directly affected the carryover that was already in place on the 2020 budget. So they were off quite a bit. Collector's automation underneath it was, I forgot the 35,000 that it costs to put all those delinquent names in the newspaper. So that just completely slipped my mind, but anyway. Everything else, the adding to the budget's always good. General fund, 339,000. And, jail also, we'll get 88,000 put back in unappropriated reserves. Like I always tell people, I'm not doing anything with these numbers. What I gave you to start with, those balances, that's what's actually in the funds. I won't be doing any transfers or anything. This is just what the carryovers actually were.
Now, this is the money that from 2019, correct?
Yes.
All right. Is there any public comment? Do I have a motion to pass this on to Quorum Court? Okay, on the consent agenda? Okay. We have any public comment? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. All right, we're now to 17. An ordinance reducing the amount of $714,384 from line items in various county budgets and restoring those funds to unappropriated reserves and appropriate the total amount of $945,449 from unappropriated reserves to various budget line items for 2019. All right, this is a housekeeping, is that correct, Mr. Worthen? A housekeeping ordinance.
Move to pass and add to consent agenda.
Is there any public comment?
So, as administrative judge, I was asked in the fall, what sort of automation type expenses could we pay out of the circuit court automation fund?
Correct.
And I said, anything that's in the courtroom related to the court reporters and whatnot. So I started doing that, and I have my little book of all my little expenses that are paid out of the circuit court automation fund. So when you look at the statement of operations for the circuit court automation fund, it's going to show that the percentage of the budgeted amount of the circuit court automation fund that we've already used 43%, and it's only March. Well, at that time it was February. So I just wanted to explain the reason that it's been used so much is because instead of each circuit court paying out of their budget from the general revenue or whatever, we're now using the circuit court automation fund more frequently, like those little phones that go to the prison where you see the prisoner, so Sheriff Helder doesn't have to transport the person to court from prison. So the circuit court automation fund paid for 7 of those special kinds of phones. And the court reporters now, if they need a new computer in the courtroom, it's paid from the circuit court automation fund. So that's why it's showing that we've used a lot more than at this time last year. We still have like $162,000 in that fund, so it's still nice and healthy, but I just wanted to point that out so I don't have to come back and explain it on Thursday.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for taking the initiative and taking those things out of that fund instead of out of general fund. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right. Now, have we voted on this one? No. Okay. All those, any public comment? Any other public comment? All right. All those in favor of 16-1, say aye. Oh, sorry, I'm on 17. I've got it 16 there. Okay. All those in favor of 17, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, passed on to the Quorum Court. Okay, that is the end of the agenda. Do we have any public comment? We are adjourned.